That gold-digging bitch probably poisoned my father to get her hands on everything he built. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I stood frozen behind the mahogany door of my late brother's study, my hand still on the brass handle, as my nephew Marcus continued his venomous rant to someone on the phone. It was barely 3 hours after we had buried William, and already the vultures were circling. I'm Robert Chen, 63 years old, retired from a 30-year career in corporate law. My younger brother William had been my closest friend, my business partner, and the only family I had left after our parents passed. When he introduced me to Sarah 2 years ago at his engagement party, I saw something in her eyes that reminded me of my own late wife kindness, genuine warmth, the kind you can't fake. Sarah was 42, a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital, and she had cared for William during his brutal fight with pancreatic cancer. They fell in love during those long, painful months of treatment. Marcus, William's son from his first marriage, had always been a piece of work. 34 years old, Harvard MBA, working for some hedge fund in Manhattan. He wore $1,000 suits and treated everyone like they were beneath him. His mother, William's ex-wife Catherine, had raised him with a sense of entitlement that would make royalty blush. When William divorced Catherine 20 years ago after discovering her affair with his business partner, she had gotten a substantial settlement money that Marcus burned through funding his lifestyle of luxury cars and penthouse apartments. I pressed my ear closer to the door. "Listen, Jonathan. I don't care what it costs," Marcus hissed into his phone. "I want everything on her. Every job she's ever had. Every relationship. Every parking ticket. My father couldn't have been in his right mind when he married her. She's been with him, 3 years? And suddenly he changes his will? It's textbook undue influence." My jaw clenched. William had been sharp as a tack right up until the end. The cancer had taken his body, not his mind. "I'm talking to Davidson tomorrow about filing a challenge to the will," Marcus continued. "But I need ammunition. Find me something that proves she manipulated him. Check her finances. I bet she's got debt up to her eyeballs. These types always do." These types. I wanted to burst through that door and throw him out of William's house right then and there, but something made me wait. In my years practicing law, I'd learned that patience and evidence were more powerful than rage. "Yeah, I'll be here through the end of the week," Marcus said. "Gotta play the grieving son for the relatives. You know how it is. But trust me, by the time I'm done, Sarah Chen won't have a penny of my father's money." I heard him laugh, a cold, calculating sound that made my skin crawl. I carefully backed away from the door and made my way downstairs to the living room, where Sarah sat on the leather couch, surrounded by William's oldest friends. Her eyes were red from crying, and she held a photograph of William from their wedding day. She looked so small, so fragile, wearing the black dress she'd bought for today's funeral. Tom Martinez, William's college roommate, was telling her a story about their fraternity days, trying to coax a smile from her. Sarah managed a weak one, her fingers tracing the edge of the picture frame. "Robert," she said when she saw me, her voice hoarse, "are you okay? You look pale." I forced myself to smile and sat down beside her. "Just tired, sweetheart. It's been a long day." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt her tremble. "I don't know how I'm going to do this without him. He was everything to me." "I know," I said softly, putting my arm around her. "But you're not alone. William would want us to look after each other." What I didn't say was what I'd just heard upstairs. What I didn't tell her was that William's own son was already sharpening his knives, ready to tear her apart. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what we were dealing with. The next morning, I made some calls. I still had connections from my law career friends who owed me favors, colleagues who specialized in different areas. By noon, I had hired Michael Torres, one of the best private investigators in Boston. By evening, I had an appointment with Elizabeth Wu, a litigation attorney who had never lost an estate dispute case. "Talk to me, Robert," Elizabeth said when we met at her office downtown. She was 55, sharper than any lawyer I'd ever worked with, and she didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her everything about Marcus's phone call, about the will William had drawn up 6 months before his death, leaving everything to Sarah except for a trust fund Marcus had already received years ago. About the campaign Marcus was clearly planning. Elizabeth leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. The good news is that William's will is airtight. I reviewed it myself when he asked me to witness it. He was completely lucid. We have multiple witnesses, and he even included a video deposition explaining his wishes. But Marcus can still make Sarah's life hell with a protracted legal battle. Even if he loses, and he will lose, it'll cost time, money, and emotional energy. And in the meantime, he can poison the family against her, drag her name through the mud, make her wish she'd never met your brother. I thought about Sarah's face this morning at breakfast, the way she'd barely touched her toast, the way her hands shook when she poured her coffee. She was already drowning in grief. Marcus's attack would destroy her. So what do we do? I asked. Elizabeth smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a warrior preparing for battle. We document everything, every lie, every false accusation, every attempt at manipulation. And then we don't just defend, we counterattack. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Marcus work his poison through the family. It started subtly at first. At the post-funeral gathering at the country club, I overheard Marcus talking to his Aunt Patricia, William's sister. "I'm just worried about Dad's legacy," he said, voice dripping with false concern. "Sarah's a nice enough woman, but she was his nurse. You know how vulnerable he was during his treatment. It's textbook elder abuse, really." Patricia, who had always been easy to manipulate, nodded sympathetically. "Do you really think—" "I'm not saying she's a bad person," Marcus continued, his tone perfectly calibrated. "I'm just saying Dad wasn't himself. The medication, the pain, he would have signed anything she put in front of him." I wanted to intervene, but Michael Torres had advised me to stay quiet, to let Marcus hang himself with his own rope. So I watched, and I listened, and I documented. Marcus's campaign escalated. He started a whisper campaign among William's business associates, suggesting that Sarah had isolated William from his friends during his illness. He implied to the board of William's foundation that Sarah might try to redirect charitable funds. He even called some of William's golf buddies, painting a picture of a manipulative woman who had seduced a sick, vulnerable man. And Sarah suffered through it all with a dignity that broke my heart. She heard the whispers at the grocery store, saw the way some of William's friends suddenly became too busy to return her calls. She found out that Marcus had hired an attorney when his lawyer's office accidentally sent papers to William's old address. "Robert," she said to me one evening as we sat on William's now her back porch, watching the sunset over the garden William had loved, "maybe I should just give it all to Marcus. The house, the money, everything. I don't care about any of it. I just want William back." "No," I said firmly. "William left you everything for a reason. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he wanted you to be taken care of. Don't let Marcus bully you into giving up what's rightfully yours." "But the family will come around," I lied. I wasn't sure they would, but I needed her to stay strong. "Marcus is the one in the wrong here, not you." She wiped her eyes. "I never wanted any of this. I loved William for who he was, not what he had. When I was taking care of him at the hospital, he was just another patient at first. A kind man who always said thank you, who asked about my day, who treated me like a person instead of just hired help." Her voice cracked. "We didn't fall in love because of money. We fell in love because we made each other laugh during the worst time of his life." I knew that was true. I'd seen them together, the way William's face lit up when Sarah walked into a room, the way she'd rearrange her shifts to spend time with him, the way they'd hold hands and talk for hours about books and movies and their dreams for the future. It was real love, the kind that most people never find. But Marcus didn't care about truth. He cared about money and pride and the fact that someone outside the family, someone he considered beneath him now, controlled the Chen fortune. The court date was set for early December, just 2 months after William's death. Marcus filed a formal challenge to the will, citing undue influence, lack of capacity, and fraud. Elizabeth Wu had warned me it was coming, but seeing it in writing still made my blood boil. Michael Torres, meanwhile, had been busy, and what he found was gold. "Robert, you need to see this," he said when we met at a coffee shop near his office. He slid a thick folder across the table to me. I opened it and started reading. My eyes widened with each page. Marcus Chen wasn't just a spoiled trust fund kid, he was a criminal. Over the past 5 years, he'd embezzled over $2 million from his hedge fund, hiding it in offshore accounts and shell companies. He had massive gambling debts with some very dangerous people in Atlantic City. He'd been borrowing money from loan sharks, using his expected inheritance as collateral. "There's more," Michael said. "Remember that trust fund William set up for Marcus when he turned 25? The one worth about $3 million? Yes? Marcus burned through it in 6 years. Cars, apartments, cocaine habit, it's all documented here. William found out about 2 years ago and cut him off. That's when Marcus started embezzling from his firm." I felt sick. William had known his son was in trouble, had tried to help him, and Marcus had responded by stealing and lying. "And here's the kicker," Michael continued. "Marcus's firm found out about the embezzlement 3 months ago. They were planning to press charges, but Marcus convinced them to let him repay the money. He told them he'd be getting a large inheritance soon that would cover everything. He was counting on William dying," I said slowly. "And when William left everything to Sarah, Marcus's whole house of cards collapsed. His firm is threatening to go to the police. The loan sharks are threatening to break his legs, and he's desperate. This isn't about grieving a father. This is about survival." I sat back, my mind racing. This changed everything. "There's one more thing," Michael said, his expression grim. "I found evidence that Marcus visited William in the hospital 2 months before he died. The nurses remember it because Marcus caused a scene, demanding that William sign some papers. When William refused, Marcus told him, and I quote, from a nurse who overheard, 'You're going to regret this, old man. I'll make sure that wife of yours gets nothing.' My hands clenched into fists. Marcus had threatened his own dying father. What kind of monster does that? I met with Elizabeth Wu that evening and showed her everything. She read through the documents, her expression growing more pleased with each page. 'This is prosecutable,' she said. 'The embezzlement alone could get him 5 to 10 years. And the threats to William, we can use those to show his character, his motive for challenging the will. What's our next move? We wait for the court date. Let Marcus present his case first. Let him lie under oath about how much he loved his father, how concerned he is about his father's legacy. And then we destroy him.' The weeks leading up to the court date were torture for Sarah. Marcus's lawyers deposed her, asking invasive questions about her relationship with William, implying she was a gold digger, suggesting she had manipulated a dying man. I sat with her through every session, watching her face grow more drawn, more exhausted. 'Why is he doing this?' she asked me one night. 'Even if he wins, and I'll give him everything if it means this stops, he'll have destroyed his father's memory. Doesn't he care about that?' 'Some people only care about themselves,' I said. 'Marcus has always been that way. William tried to teach him better, but some lessons never take.' What I didn't tell her was about the evidence we had, about the trap we were setting. Elizabeth had advised me to keep Sarah in the dark, so her testimony would be genuine, uncoached. It killed me to watch her suffer, but I knew it would be worth it in the end. The court hearing arrived on a cold December morning. The courtroom was packed. Marcus had made sure of that, inviting family members and William's associates, playing the role of concerned son fighting for his father's true wishes. Marcus took the stand first, dressed in an expensive suit, his face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. 'My father wasn't himself during his final months,' Marcus testified, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. 'The cancer, the medication, it changed him. Sarah was his nurse. She had complete control over his care, his medication, his visitors. She isolated him from his family and friends.' 'That's not true,' Sarah whispered beside me. But Elizabeth put a hand on her arm. 'Wait,' Elizabeth mouthed. Marcus continued, weaving his lies, painting Sarah as a manipulative woman who had seduced a vulnerable man for his money. He presented evidence testimony from a few family members Patricia had convinced. Financial records showing Sarah's modest income, the implication being that she was desperate for money. His lawyer hammered the points home. Isn't it true that Miss Sarah Martinez, now Mrs. Chen, had student loans and credit card debt before meeting William Chen? Yes, Sarah admitted quietly when she took the stand. I'm a nurse. I don't make as much as someone who works in finance. And isn't it convenient that William Chen, worth an estimated $15 million, happened to fall in love with you while he was at his most vulnerable? It wasn't like that. Isn't it true that you encouraged William to cut his son out of the will? No. William made his own decisions. I never asked him for anything. I watched Sarah's composure crumble, saw the tears stream down her face, and I wanted to storm that witness stand and call out every lie. But Elizabeth had told me to trust her, to wait for our turn. Finally, after 2 days of Marcus's side presenting their case, it was our turn. Elizabeth stood up, smoothed her suit jacket, and smiled at the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call Robert Chen to the stand. I walked up, was sworn in, and sat down. Elizabeth approached me with a folder in her hand. Mr. Chen, you're the brother of the deceased, William Chen, correct? Yes. And you were close with your brother? He was my best friend. Can you tell us about William's state of mind in his final months? I took a deep breath. My brother was in pain, yes. He was facing death, yes. But his mind was clear. He knew exactly what he was doing when he made his will. In fact, he discussed it with me extensively. What did he tell you? He told me that he loved Sarah more than he'd ever loved anyone. He told me that she had given him joy and companionship during the darkest time of his life. He told me that his son Marcus had disappointed him deeply, and that he had already given Marcus more than enough money to build a good life. Money that Marcus had squandered. Marcus shot to his feet. That's a lie. The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Chen, sit down. Elizabeth smiled. Mr. Chen, Robert, did your brother leave any other documentation of his wishes? Yes. He made a video statement 6 months before his death, explaining his decisions clearly. He was evaluated by 2 independent psychiatrists who confirmed he had full capacity. He wanted to make sure no one could claim Sarah had manipulated him. Elizabeth played the video for the court. William's face appeared on the screen, gaunt but alert, his eyes clear. My name is William Chen. His recorded voice filled the courtroom. I'm making this statement of my own free will, in full possession of my mental faculties. I am leaving the majority of my estate to my wife, Sarah Chen, because she is the love of my life and deserves to be taken care of. My son, Marcus, received a substantial trust fund years ago, which I understand he has mismanaged. While I love my son, I do not trust him with additional funds, and I want to ensure my wife's future is secure. Sarah was crying silently beside me. I saw several family members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The video continued with William explaining his decisions in detail, leaving no room for doubt. When it ended, Elizabeth turned back to me. Mr. Chen, did you have any interactions with Marcus Chen after William's death? Yes. Can you describe them? This was it. The moment we'd been building toward. 3 hours after William's funeral, I overheard Marcus on the phone in William's study. He was speaking to someone I later learned it was a private investigator about building a case against Sarah. He called her a gold-digging bitch and said he wanted to find evidence to prove she'd manipulated his father. The courtroom erupted. Marcus's lawyer jumped up, objecting. The judge called for order. Elizabeth pressed on. Did you take any action based on what you heard? Yes. I hired my own investigator to look into Marcus's claims. What he found was very different from the picture Marcus has been painting. Elizabeth opened her folder. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence regarding Marcus Chen's financial situation and activities over the past 5 years. What followed was devastating. Elizabeth methodically presented every piece of evidence Michael Torres had uncovered. The embezzlement, the gambling debts, the burned trust fund, the threats to William in the hospital, the testimony from nurses who'd witnessed Marcus's behavior, the evidence that Marcus had been counting on his father's death to solve his financial problems. Marcus's face went from red to white. His lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Several family members gasped as the full picture emerged. Mr. Chen, Elizabeth addressed Marcus directly when he was called back to the stand. Did you embezzle $2 million from your employer? That's not. I was going to pay it back. Did you tell your dying father that you would make sure his wife got nothing? He was confused. He didn't understand. Did you burn through a $3 million trust fund in 6 years on cocaine, gambling, and luxury purchases while your father was working 16-hour days to build his business? Marcus said nothing. His lawyer was frantically flipping through papers, trying to find a way to object, to defend, to salvage anything from this disaster. Elizabeth turned to the judge. Your Honor, this case is not about a grieving son trying to honor his father's true wishes. This is about a desperate man trying to steal money from his father's widow to pay off debts incurred through criminal activity. William Chen knew exactly who his son had become, and that's why he made the choices he did. His will should be honored as written. The judge looked at Marcus with undisguised disgust. I've heard enough. This challenge to the will is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering that all evidence of Mr. Marcus Chen's criminal activities be forwarded to the district attorney's office for review. Marcus tried to speak, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. They hurried out of the courtroom, and I knew that Marcus's troubles were just beginning. The DA would press charges, his employer would file suit, and the loan sharks would come calling. He'd destroyed himself. Sarah sat frozen in her seat, staring at the judge's bench. I put my arm around her. It's over, I said. You're safe now. I can't believe. All that time, he was. She couldn't finish the sentence. The betrayal was too enormous to comprehend. William knew, I said gently. That's why he protected you. He wanted to make sure you'd be okay. Over the next few weeks, the truth spread through the family and William's circle of friends. Those who had been poisoned by Marcus's lies came to Sarah with apologies. Patricia cried as she hugged Sarah, begging for forgiveness. William's business associates reached out, expressing their regret for doubting her. Marcus was arrested 2 weeks after the court hearing. The embezzlement charges, combined with fraud and extortion, meant he was looking at serious prison time. His hedge fund fired him, his apartment was foreclosed on, and his so-called friends disappeared. I wish I could say I felt sorry for him, but I didn't. He had tried to destroy a good woman to cover his own crimes. He had dishonored his father's memory and betrayed everything William had tried to teach him. Whatever happened to Marcus now, he had brought it on himself. 3 months after the court case, Sarah asked me to meet her at the house, her house now, though she still struggled to think of it that way. I've been thinking about what William would want, she said as we sat in the garden. Spring was arriving, and the flowers William had planted were starting to bloom. He loved this house, but it's too big for me alone. And his money, he earned it through hard work and generosity. I want to use it the way he would have. What do you have in mind? She showed me her plans. She was converting the house into a care facility for terminal cancer patients who needed a peaceful place to spend their final days. She was establishing a foundation in William's name to fund cancer research and provide financial assistance to families dealing with catastrophic illness. She was donating to the hospital where she'd met William, funding nursing scholarships for students who wanted to work in oncology. I don't need millions of dollars, she said. I just need enough to live comfortably and do work that matters. The rest should go to helping others, the way William always helped others. I looked at this remarkable woman, this nurse who had loved my brother, who had suffered through Marcus's attacks with grace, and I understood why William had loved her so deeply. She wasn't a gold digger or a manipulator. She was simply good, in a world that often punishes goodness. William chose well, I said, my voice rough with emotion. He would be so proud of you. I hope so, she said. I miss him every day, but I think I'm going to be okay. Thanks to you, I just helped the truth come out. You did the hard part. You stayed strong when Marcus tried to break you. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. We made a good team. You and William always did, and now you and I do too. I hope you'll help me run the foundation. I'm going to need someone with legal expertise and business sense. I agreed, of course. It gave me a purpose, a way to honor my brother's memory and support the woman he'd loved. Marcus was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. His mother, Catherine, tried to drum up sympathy for him, but few people were willing to listen. The evidence was too damning, the betrayal too complete. I sometimes think about that day after the funeral, when I stood outside William's study and heard Marcus's vicious words about Sarah. If I had confronted him then, in anger, what would have happened? Would he have found a way to wriggle free, to spin his lies more effectively? Would Sarah have suffered more, for longer? Instead, I had waited, I had gathered evidence, I had built an unassailable case, and when the moment came, justice had been swift and complete. Sarah's cancer care facility opened a year after William's death. She named it William's Garden, after his love of the flowers and plants he'd cultivated in their backyard. Terminal patients come there for palliative care, to spend their final days in beauty and comfort, surrounded by people who care for them with the same tenderness Sarah had shown William. I visit every week, sometimes to handle foundation business, sometimes just to sit in the garden and remember my brother. Sarah is always there, moving from room to room, holding hands and offering comfort to people facing the end of their lives. She's found her calling, her way of honoring William's memory. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, I can almost feel William's presence in that garden, approving of what Sarah has built, proud of how she's transformed pain into purpose. Marcus will get out of prison eventually. Maybe he'll have learned something from his fall. Maybe he'll have gained some measure of understanding about the difference between love and greed, between family and money. But I doubt it. Some people never learn. What I do know is this: Sarah's name has been cleared, her reputation restored, and her future secured. The family members who doubted her now see the truth. William's legacy lives on, not in bank accounts and stock portfolios, but in the lives saved and comforted by the foundation Sarah built in his name. In the end, Marcus's attempt to destroy Sarah only revealed his own destruction. His lies exposed his crimes. His greed cost him everything. And Sarah, the woman he called a gold digger, the woman he tried to cheat and humiliate, she became exactly what William believed she was: a force for good in a world that desperately needs more kindness. That's the last laugh, Marcus. The one that echoes through every life your father's foundation touches, through every patient who finds peace in William's garden, through every nurse who receives a scholarship in your father's name. You tried to take everything from Sarah, and instead, you gave her the opportunity to give everything to the world. I hope someday you understand the irony. But mainly, I just hope you never forget. The man you betrayed was worth 100 of you, and the woman you tried to destroy was stronger than you ever imagined. Justice isn't always immediate, but when it comes, it's complete. And standing here in William's garden, watching Sarah bring comfort to the dying, I know my brother is at peace. His love found the right person. His money found the right purpose. And his son learned that some debts can never be repaid. Some wounds can never be healed. And some mistakes cost more than money. They cost everything that matters. That's the truth Marcus discovered too late. In the end, the only thing worth inheriting is love. And that was the one thing he could never claim, because it was the one thing he never gave.